Welcome to the Building a Better Brain program. This is a program that originally started at Adventist Health in Sonora, California. We are now in Sierra Vista, Arizona. We presented it once here. We presented it several times at Adventist Health Hospital in Sonora. The number of people with Alzheimer's in the United States will triple by 2050. Currently, there's about 6.7 million people with Alzheimer's disease in the United States. This was in 2023. By 2050, there'll be 13.8 million if the trends continue. This is according to a recent study. This is a MRI that is looking at the structures in the brain. The blue structure here is the hippocampus. This is felt to be the center for memory. I was taught at birth that we had only a certain number of neurons, about 100 billion or so, and then with time, the numbers got less, which is partially true. As this MRI shows, this is not completely true because with brain training, the hippocampus can grow in size and number of neurons, and this is part of our current program and part of our goal. Okay, let's get right into it. What are some of the opportunities to reduce our risk? The benefit is really for prevention rather than cure. Prevention is always easier and better than cure. So our opportunity to reduce our risk is if we are obese to just being overweight, and if we're overweight to being normal weight. If we decrease our BMI from being obese, which is plus 30, to just being overweight, which is 25 to 30, we can cut our risk in half. If we have blood pressure problems and we can keep our blood pressure in a normal range, this will reduce our risk by 15%. If we are on a standard American diet, we can reduce our risk by 50% if we adopt the diet that will be prescribed in this program. If we are not exercising, we can reduce our risk by beginning an exercise program. This works by increasing the BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. If we can do more brain activity, memory work, and as we'll describe later, we can improve our cognitive function. This is an important part of the program. If we have trouble sleeping and we improve our sleeping, this will also reduce our risk. If our minds are anxious or stressed, it's important to calm your mind and reduce this risk. We also check for laboratory values to find out if there's any toxins in the blood, vitamin deficiencies, etc., that might be contributing to any cognitive decline. It's always important to try to track down the cause of a disease. The cause of dementia can be classified in the following categories: inflammation, amyloid related, and generalized. These are two different classes, but work in the same similar mechanism. Glycotoxicity, either related to diabetes or prediabetes. Number 3, nutritional deficiency. Number 4, certain toxins can cause dementia, such as mercury, lead, and other toxins. Number 5, vascular disease. Number 6, traumatic brain injury. This has affected those that play football or do boxing. There's what's called an amyloid precursor protein. It's part of our immune system. It's abbreviated APP. This here, we see a picture of this in an illustration on a cell wall in the brain. This can be either on the neuron or on the astrocyte. This is part of our immune system. How this is cut determines the solubility of it and the toxicity of it. the more inflammation we have, the more amyloid will be produced to try to fight any potential infection in the brain or perceived infection. We see here an illustration of the amyloid precursor protein is cut. It is cut in these little snippets here, which, as we see in the next picture, can form a plaque. These plaque attaches to the neuron, damage the neuron, and can cause neuronal damage and decreased brain function. Some of the unwanted causes of inflammation are called nonspecific. This can be caused by an excess of inflammatory foods such as beef, pork, omega-6 oils, which are in vegetable oil, sugar, and white flour. Deficiencies in certain vitamins such as B12, D, and other vitamins also can cause this nonspecific inflammation. Deficiency in the good oil, omega-3 oil, that's found in flaxseed, walnuts, and cold water fish can also cause nonspecific inflammation. There's what's called a specific inflammation, and there is two general types of these. One is called the cell-mediated immunity, and this is usually done by the T cells, T lymphocytes. These are white cells that remember certain toxins or bacteria, and when we're exposed to it again, they will cause an inflammatory reaction to try to get rid of these specific toxins. There is also what's called antibodies. These are made by the B lymphocytes, and they produce a specific binding to certain antigens that help your body dispose of these antigens. This is how viruses work, and this is how, when you get certain infections, your body remembers it and you won't get it again, such as when we get chicken pox when we're little. We will generally not get it again. Sometimes we can get it later on in the form of shingles. The causes of specific inflammation are infections, toxins. Sometimes certain food proteins can cross in the bowels. The bowel junctions are supposed to protect this, but sometimes we get what's called a leaky bowel, and these food proteins can cause a reaction, and we can become allergic to certain foods. Also, this is how vaccines work. When we get a vaccine, your body makes antibodies and is able to fight off the actual infection. There are genetic risks for dementia. There's what's called the APOE4. There is the APOE4, which has one abnormal amino acid in it, which makes it not function as well at getting rid of the amyloid as the normal APOE3. The APOE4 we'll discuss later. The APOE3 is the normal. So we've found that of the people with dementia, nearly half of them have the APOE4 genetic mutation, but about 10 to 20% don't have that. They have the normal APOE3. People with obesity, they have an increased risk of dementia. People with hypertension have an increased risk by about 15%. That is why it's important to keep our blood pressure down, along with other reasons. 70 million people, or 23% of the population, has what's called this APOE4 genetic mutation, which triples your risk of Alzheimer's disease. It doesn't mean that just because you have this, you're going to get Alzheimer's, but it means that you need to be more cautious and more diligent at preventing the risk and reducing your other risk factors. About 114 million people, or 35% of the people in the United States, are currently obese. This increases their risk of This increases the risk of dementia by 2 to 3 times. 98 million people, or 30% of the population, are overweight. This causes some mild decrease in your risk of dementia by 1.5 to 2 times the normal risk. There is what's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, and we'll be talking about this quite a bit. The BDNF stimulates the production of new brain cells and improves existing ones. When your BDNF is released, it activates genes that grow new brain cells and pathways. BDNF increased brain plasticity. Plasticity, we mean that it increases the ability for your brain to grow and change. When your brain cells get damaged or face a stressful situation, BDNF protects them and helps them come back stronger. Things that increase the BDNF are endurance exercise. In one study, men who cycled daily for 3 months nearly quadrupled their resting BDNF. Strength training exercise increased the BDNF, but only for a few minutes post-workout. Deep sleep also increased BDNF. Calming the mind also increased the BDNF by lowering the stress hormones. Polyphenol antioxidants, such as in green tea, blueberries, colorful vegetables, were all excellent source of increasing the polyphenol antioxidants and increase the BDNF. Sun exposure will increase BDNF. It's good to get outside for the direct sunlight, 10 to 15 minutes a day. Leave your sunscreen off. Intermittent fasting also increases your BDNF. Things that decrease your BDNF is stress. Stress and anxiety is one of the biggest BDNF inhibitors. Sugar, such as refined sugar and fructose in particular, directly curbs BDNF. Social isolation, lack of meaningful mental stimulants, leads to a lower BDNF level. Depression can also decrease BDNF. We don't want to make this program overwhelming. Inch by inch, life is a cinch. Yard by yard, life is hard. So we need to take things gradually and add things as we're able. This is from the book Atomic Habits. We overestimate what we can accomplish in a day or a week, but we underestimate what we can accomplish in a year. The next part is divided into 6 general parts. So we'll discuss the diet effect to help prevent dementia now. The Mediterranean diet has actually been the most studied diet. A recent large study suggests that by sticking to the Mediterranean diet, we could reduce our dementia by 23% compared to people that are on the average American diet. The Mediterranean diet is characterized by the diet that was practiced in Cyprus in the 1960s, associated with half the rate of Alzheimer's dementia. The foundation of the Mediterranean diet is a plant food diet. This means meals are built around vegetables, fruits, herbs, nuts, beans, and whole grains. Moderate amount of dairy, poultry, and eggs are part of a Mediterranean diet, as is seafood. By contrast, red meat is eaten rarely. Recently, there has been designed what's called the MIND diet. This is an improvement on the Mediterranean diet. It integrates the principles of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. The MIND diet was created with 10 foods in focus and 5 to limit. The foods you are encouraged to eat while on the MIND diet includes green leafy vegetables, all other vegetables, berries, fresh fruits, nuts, olive oil, whole grains, potatoes, sweet potato, fish, beans, and poultry. The things to avoid on the Mediterranean diet: butter, margarine, and seed oil, cheese, red meat, fried food, and sweets. The power of the diet is in the green leafy vegetables, all other vegetables, berries, nuts, omega-3 oil, flax oil, walnuts, and cold water fish. With this diet, we need to ensure adequate levels of B12, vitamin D, and omega-3 fatty acids. In a recently published British medical journal, their research found that food associated with reduced risk of dementia were whole grains, green leafy vegetables, other vegetables, berries, fish, beans, and nuts, while foods associated with increased risk of dementia were red meats and its products, fried and fast foods, butter, margarine, cheese, and pastries and sweets. The mechanism linking red meat and its products that are consumed to the risk of Alzheimer's disease include those related to inflammation. In the British Medical Journal, it points out that what's called AGE, or AGES, AGEs, advanced glycation in products, which are formed by cooking meat at high temperatures, such as barbecue or also in aged cheeses. AGEs generate free radicals and increase inflammation. In combination with copper and sugar, AGEs also contribute to neurological dysfunction. There was a large study by the U.S. National Health and Nutritional Examination Survey. This is called NHANES. There was 24,825 participants. Those on a low-carb, high-protein, high-saturated fat diet had a 23% higher risk of all-cause death over an average of 6.4 years. Death from coronary diseases were increased by 50%. Death from cerebral vascular disease were increased by 50%. Death from cancer was increased by 35%. This is what is commonly known as an Atkins diet, and it's not recommended to prevent dementia, although it will help you lose weight. The consequences are not worth the risk. Stock up on fruits and vegetables. When it comes to fruits and vegetables, the more the better. Eat up across the color spectrum to maximize protective antioxidants and vitamins, including green leafy vegetables, berry, and coniferous vegetables. Coniferous vegetables are such as broccoli. Cook at home is often beneficial. By cooking at home, you can ensure that you're eating fresh, wholesome meals that are high in brain-healthy nutrition, low in sugar, salt, and unhealthy fats and additives. Overall, the results show that a higher exposure of processed foods was consistently associated with an increased risk of 32 adverse health outcomes. This is from the British Medical Journal. The British Medical Journal reports, convincing evidence showed that the high ultra-processed foods intake was associated with about a 50% increased risk of cardiovascular disease-related death and a 48 to 53% higher risk of anxiety and common mental disorders, and a 12% increased risk of type 2 diabetes. These products also tend to be high in added sugar, fats, and salt, but low in vitamins and fiber. Fats, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good fats, these are the omega-3 fats, virgin cold-pressed monounsaturated fatty acids such as virgin olive oil. The bad fats include omega-3 fatty acids, vegetable oil, and saturated fats found in red meat. The ugly are the hydrogenated fats and trans fats. Beef is generally inflammatory. Why is red meat harmful? Research shows that fatty meats like beef, pork, lamb, animal fats, and saturated fats can alter your gut bacteria by increasing lipopolysaccharides, which can trigger inflammation. Saturated fats from coconut oil is a bit controversial. Currently, the idea is there might be one exception to the saturated fat category, coconut oil. This plant-based form of saturated fat has gained popularity in recent years, and animal studies published in 2014 and 2015 has suggested that it has anti-inflammatory properties. Unlike other saturated fat, coconut oil is made mostly of medium-chain fatty acids that your body processes differently. There is evidence that there is a decrease in inflammation of arthritis from taking coconut oil. Currently, there is no long-term studies regarding heart disease and cancer in relation to coconut oil. However, island people on their traditional diet have had lots of coconut oil, and before the Western diet came, they had little heart disease. This is a rather complicated slide, but it illustrates an important concept. We see on the left-hand side the omega-3 fatty acids, which are considered beneficial and helpful. And then on the other side, we see the omega-6 fatty acids. We don't want to consider all omega-6 fatty acids bad, because we do need some omega-6, but it's important to recognize many diseases are caused by an excess of omega-6 fatty acids. And this explains the mechanism. In the center part, we have the competing enzymes, both omega-3 fatty acids and omega-6 fatty acids use the same enzymes as it goes down from the top of this page to the bottom of the page. So if you have an excess of omega-6 fatty acids, the omega-3 fatty acids are not able to find enough enzymes to use to make the very important EPA and DHA that is essential for the brain. These also are very anti-inflammatory, whereas the omega-6 fatty acids have more inflammation, especially from this arachidonic acid, as you see in the middle. So the ratios between omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids can determine our inflammation, and our inflammation can determine our risk for Alzheimer's disease. So we see if we have an excess of omega-6 fatty acids, we will form more inflammatory compounds. And if we have a good ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids, we will make the very beneficial EPA, DHA, which is used in the brain and are considered anti-inflammatory and can help reduce our risk of dementia. We've seen in the last slide how the omega-6 oils these are commonly called vegetable oil, such as corn oil, soybean oil, or other kinds of similar kind of vegetable oil. We see here a slide of the Japanese diet pattern, which has changed over the last 50 to 70 years. They have increased the amount of consumption of the omega-6 vegetable oil from 81 calories in 1960 to 351 calories in 2010. The carbohydrates have actually gone down. The saturated fats, as in the purple, have stayed flat. The sugar, especially since 1990, has reduced. The main thing that has increased in our diet in the last 50 to 60 years has been vegetable oils. In the next slide, we see what has happened to their weight. They had in their population, they only had 16% people that were obese in 1980, and in 2010, 32% of the people were obese. This has gone up, doubled, and we see that diabetes has more than doubled, although it's not at the rate that there is in the United States. Neither is the obesity at that rate. it has significantly gone up. You see in the red line here, the diabetes has gone to almost no diabetes in 1955 to a diabetes rate of 6.9% in 2010. And we see that really the only thing that has changed significantly in their diet has been the vegetable oil. Here we see in this next slide that the rate of breast cancer has gone up about fourfold, from 21,000 per 100,000 to 101 per 100,000 in this same time period from 1960 to 2010. Those that study these things feel it is the vegetable oil, and it's really the most significant thing that's changed in their diet. The Chinese diet has a similar pattern. Used to be you hardly ever saw an obese Chinese person from mainland China, but now since they become more affluent and they've added vegetable oil to their diet, you can see the significant rise in vegetable oil on the blue line, and the being overweight has gone up from being 15% to 42%, and the cancer rate has gone up significantly also, as you can see in the red line. This is also seen in the pattern of the United States. As the vegetable oil in the blue line here has increased, so has the obesity. And you can see since 1999, the sugar intake has actually decreased, but the obesity rate has continued to rise. This picture here is a picture of the fattest man in the world in 1890. People paid money to see him. But today, if he was walking down the street, most of us would not even notice him. His appearance would not be that unusual. In fact, most of us have relatives that would probably weigh similar to this man's weight. This here is also a picture taken in 1890 of men in a gathering, and you can see that there aren't any obese men there. They all appear well nourished but not obese. In Australia, there was no significant effect of sugar consumption on the prevalence of obesity or diabetes at all. They felt it was all due to the vegetable oil consumption, and they have the similar problems of increased obesity, increased cancer, and increased consumption of vegetable oil as we do here. As we've stated previously, that obesity is a significant risk for Alzheimer's disease. And in this picture here, it's the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease since the 1900s. And you can see that there is a steady increase. This goes up to 2000. It's at least tied to obesity and probably to the increased inflammation from higher intake of the omega-6 vegetable oils. For cancer of the breast and prostate, the pro-inflammatory eicosanoids production of omega-6 fatty acids, as we've seen in the chart prior, particularly of the arachidonic acid, helps existing cancer cells grow more aggressively. Omega-6 fatty acids are inflammatory when refined and taken in excess. Where are we getting all the excess vegetable oils in the last 50 to 100 years? Well, there's more sauteing of vegetables and meats and vegetable oil. The baked goods frequently contain lots of these vegetable oils, cookies, and muffins. Salad dressings, marinades, salad dressings, mayonnaise, packaged snacks like cookies, crackers, and chips have these oils in them. Frozen dinners and entrees, spreads like margarine, they are ubiquitous. Multiple dietary studies have demonstrated Ingesting an adequate amount of omega-3 fatty acids causes a reduction in cancer, heart disease, obesity, inflammatory disease, including dementia. So we need to get plenty of omega-3 fats. Evidence suggests that the DHA found in these healthy fats can prevent Alzheimer's disease and dementia by reducing the beta amyloid plaques. Flax seeds, walnuts, and these smack fishes that contain the omega-3 fats are recommended. The smack fishes are salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herrings. For those in Guam and some of the other islands, the fishes that are recommended is the maya maya. These are brightly colored fishes, popular in Guam and is known as a particularly good source of omega-3 and low in mercury. And the skipjack tuna, the canned skipjack tuna is another good option for low mercury, high omega-3 fishes. Look for the varieties that are canned in water for the healthiest choice. What is our primary source of omega-3s? The omega-3 fatty acids and EPA are found in fish oil, krill. However, microalgae, not fish, are responsible for the synthesis of these. Fish accumulate omega-3 in their tissues when they consume phytoplankton that have consumed microalgae. Only plants can produce essential fatty acids. The trouble with farmed fish. Researchers analyzed the flow of nutrition from edible species of wild fish used to feed to the farmed salmon to which they were fed. They found a decrease in 6 out of 9 nutrients in the salmon fillets: calcium, iodine, iron, omega-3, vitamin B12, and vitamin A were all decreased, but an increased level of selenium and zinc was found. In addition, antibiotics are sometimes given to farmed fish. Yes, farmed salmon can contain pesticides. Some say that farmed salmon have up to 11 times more organic chlorine pesticides than wild salmon. That pesticides and insecticides used to kill the sea fleas can create toxic hydrogen peroxide that is 28 times higher than the safe level for humans. We should avoid large predator fishes like tuna, sharks, marlin, and swordfish, which eat smaller fishes, accumulate considerable amount of mercury over the lifespan that may run for decades. This is one of the supplements we're recommending. It's an algae-based supplement which contains DHA and EPA. These are essential for brain health. Omega-3 fatty acids can be found in flaxseed oil and other omega-3 oils, but they are fragile. It goes rancid easy with exposure to light, heat, and must be kept in a cool, dark place. We're going to talk about monounsaturated fatty acids now. These oils are non-inflammatory. They're found mainly in olive oil and avocado oil and some nuts. Multiple dietary studies have demonstrated a reduction in cancer, heart disease, obesity, and inflammatory disease, including dementia. Most of these studies are done by substituting cold-pressed virgin olive oil in the place of all other oils. Extra virgin olive oil. In a study, 180 participants were randomly assigned to one of 2 dietary treatment groups for 1 year. In the first group, high oleic safflower oil, high oleic sunflower oil, canola oil, and hydrogenated vegetable oil were substituted by extra virgin olive oil at doses of 20 to 30 grams per day. A controlled med diet alone was also used. In the second group, a controlled med diet alone was used. This demonstrated that in the elderly, a change in the quality of the oil would improve the cognitive function. This is a picture of an olive oil that you can buy. This one is organic. When you're buying an olive oil, some of the things to look for is look and make sure that it's extra virgin, cold pressed. And the other thing is make sure it's from one country, because if it's from multiple countries, it may not be as pure. You can see this is from only one country. It says product of Tunisia. Hydrogenated and trans fats. These are heat-damaged, unsaturated oils that have been chemically changed their shape and are toxic. Avoid toxic fats and partially hydrogenated oil. This picture of fried foods and processed chips would likely contain some sort of damaged fats, possibly trans fats. These fats are inflammatory and produce radicals, both of which are hard on the brain. Reduce your consumption by avoiding fast foods, fried and packaged foods, and anything that contains partially hydrogenated oils. Hydrogenated and trans fats are heat-damaged oils. The problem with frying. Frying can definitely change the vegetable oils, reducing its quality and potentially creating health concerns. Here is the breakdown. Oxygenation. Heat and air exposure during frying accelerates the oxidation of the oil. The breakdown of the oil molecules form harmful. These free radicals can contribute to various heart problems over time. Breakdown of nutrients. Frying can degrade some of the beneficial nutrients present in vegetable oil, like vitamins, especially vitamin E. Formation of harmful compounds. At high temperature, vegetable oils can start to form unhealthy compounds like acrylamines and aldehydes. Consumption of too much sugar can lead to various health risks, including cognitive impairment and diabetes. Artificial sweeteners. 6 artificial sweeteners approved by the FDA are listed here. Health risks associated with these artificial sweeteners, weight gain, brain tumors, and bladder cancers have been reported. There is a 41% increase in the odds of weight gain with daily use of diet sodas. So diet sodas are not recommended for people that are dieting. This is a long-term study called the Adventist Health Study of 30,000 people plus in California. One of the conclusions is the average year of life gained by doing certain behaviors. You'll see that a vegetarian diet helps, exercise helps, 2.7 years, consumption of nuts, 2.6 years, not being overweight, 1.8 years, non-smoker, 1.6 years, post-menopausal hormone use was surprisingly that it increased the lifespan by 1.06 years. We see there's a significant increase in lifespan with nuts. There's other benefits from nuts, including high fiber and vitamins and proper fat balance. It is recommended you eat about 20 grams of nuts a day, which would be about 15 almonds. People who ate nuts every day have less cardiovascular disease. There are good things in nuts: healthy fats, fiber, good plant phenols, and health-promoting compounds. What kind of nuts should we eat daily? All nuts are good for our health. The health studies look at a wide variety of nuts, including pistachios, almonds, walnuts, macadamias, peanuts, and other tree nuts. Green leafy vegetables are also brain healthy. They're an excellent source of K2, that's vitamin K. They're good for the calcium influx into the bone and teeth and help prevent osteoporosis. Myelin production is benefited by green vegetables. The myelin is the sheaths on nerves. They're an excellent source of magnesium and carotenoids. Multiple studies of blueberries have shown they're good for the brain. Here are two studies that shows that there is an increase in cognitive improvement with the use of blueberries. The second study tried fish oil. The second study compared fish oil and blueberries plus fish oil and a placebo for 24 weeks. And at the end of this time, there were fewer memory mistakes with the addition of the blueberries to the fish oil. Seaweed. Seaweed has unique mineral contents. By weight, about 34% of dried seaweed is minerals, making seaweed one of the best sources for these nutrients. They contain all the minerals required for the human body, including the macro minerals, calcium, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, chloride, sulfur, and sodium, and the trace minerals, which is zinc, copper, and iron. Okay, this is about the supplements that we're recommending to add to your diet. Vitamin D is very important for your cognitive function. We recommend about 2,000 to 5,000 international units, and we recommend that your lab test be checked and that the levels be in the 40 to 60 range. If you're thinner, you need less amounts of vitamin D, maybe in the 2,000 range. If you're overweight, you should probably need in the 5,000 range. The B12 is also recommended. If you're a vegetarian, probably 1,000 microunits is adequate. If you're a non-vegetarian, you probably need less. This can also be checked in blood tests. Omega-3 oils are recommended. You can get this in ground flaxseed, walnuts. You can get supplements, algae. You can get it in fish oil. Fish oil can be contaminated, so you want to make sure you have a good, reliable source. Magnesium is important for muscle and brain and heart function. We are recommending 200 to 400 milligrams a day. Other supplements that may help inflammation. Inflammation is a frequent contributor to cognitive decline. Turmeric or curcumin is one, ginger is another, and omega-3 oils also decrease inflammation as discussed prior. There is intriguing early research on this supplement called plasmalogen, which is a phospholipid, and some are saying that it helps dementia. The studies are promising, but still too early to recommend. So the summary of the diet, the high points: avoid omega-6 refined vegetable oil, seed oils like sunflower oil, corn oil, soybean oil, and these kinds of oils. Especially avoid deep fried foods at fast restaurants. Beef and pork are inflammatory. Omega-3 oils is beneficial. They're anti-inflammatory. Eating green vegetables and blueberries and nuts are anti-inflammatory. Monosaturated fats in extra virgin olive oil is also recommended as an oil to use. It is non-inflammatory and safe. Our next section is on exercise. Regular exercise, according to the Alzheimer's Research and Preventive Foundation, regular exercise can reduce your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease by up to 50% compared to those that are not exercising. There is this BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor stimulates the production of new brain cells and improves the existing one. When your BDNF is released, it activates genes that grow new brain cells and pathways. The BDNF increases brain plasticity. When your brain cells get damaged or face stressful situation, BDNF protects them and helps them come back stronger. Endurance exercise. Endurance exercises releases a protein called FNDCF. This FNDCF in turn increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, by 200 to 300%. In another study, men who cycled daily for 3 months nearly quadrupled their resting BDNF. Moderately intensive hiking, swimming, cycling, or pick up any sport, whatever gets your heart going, will increase your BDNF. If you do have heart problems or other problems, you should check with your doctor prior to starting exercise. Strength training increases BDNF for a few minutes post-workout. Moderate levels of strength training and resistance training not only increase muscle mass, they help you maintain brain health. For those over 65, adding 2 to 3 strength training sessions to your weekly routine can cut your risk of Alzheimer's disease in half. Tips for starting and sticking with an exercise plan. Do endurance exercise on odd days and strength training on even days. Endurance exercise might include walking, swimming, and biking. Strength training includes push-up, knee bends, and weights. Start slow. A little exercise is better than none. In fact, just adding modest amounts of physical activity to your weekly routine can have a profound beneficial effect. Choose activity you enjoy and start small. Head injuries from fall are increased risk as we age, which in turn increases the risk of Alzheimer's disease and dementia. Balance and coordination exercise can help you stay agile and avoid spills. Eliminate long hours of sedentary behavior like sitting at an office desk or in your car, watching television without exercise, or avoiding the stairs. Days without any form of exercise should be avoided. There was a study of 50,000 people aged 67 on average, about 40% who were men, who were free of dementia. They wore a wrist accelerator meter 24 hours a day for 1 week to track their daily moving time. For an average of 6-year follow-up, the researchers checked to see which participants had been diagnosed with dementia and correlated the information with the activity recorded on the start of the study. They found that the people who had been active for at least 10 hours per day had a higher risk of dementia than those who spent more time moving. The increased risk of 8% for those who sat at least 10 hours a day, and 63% for those who sat at least 12 hours a day. Exercise doesn't seem to change these odds. There was a study published recently in the Journal of Neurology. The Journal of the American Academy of Neurology analyzed health and occupational data on 7,000 Norwegians who were followed from their 30s until they retired in their 60s. In this study of more than 7,000 Norwegians in 305 occupations, those who held the least mentally demanding jobs had a 66% greater increased risk of cognitive impairment and a 31% greater risk of dementia after the age of 70 compared to those in the most mentally taxing roles. This shows that it is important to use your brain to learn new things. Neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity, the definition would be the ability of your brain to change and grow. The primary driver of learning is practice and repetition. Your brain changes by everything you do and don't do. When you enter a room today, your brain will change. Learning is about doing the work required. Learning. The brain expands or contracts depending on your thoughts. Learning requires expanding neuron structures and new connections. Passive thinking may involve only chemical and electrical transitory changes. The brain is electric. Highly charged thoughts can be laid down long term. Most of us that were around in September 11th when the New York Trade Center was hit by airplanes remember what we were doing that day. This is because highly charged thoughts are remembered. And your memory, short-term memory, is mostly chemical changes, whereas long-term memory is structural changes. The hippocampus we see here is the memory center. The amygdala in this picture is best known for its role in emotional response and formation of emotional memories. The anterior cingulate cortex is involved in motivation. The prefrontal cortex here is involved in reason. Ways to build a better brain. Remain mentally engaged with challenges you find appealing, such as reading books and newspapers, doing crossword puzzle, playing a musical instrument, participating in ongoing education, learning a new language, memorizing scripture or poems. Raising the bar for existing activity. Learn a new piece of music or improve how well you play your favorite piece. Or if you're a golfer, aim to lower your handicap. Take a lesson. Follow the road less traveled. Take a new route. Eat with your non-dominant hand. Rearrange your computer files. Vary your habit regularly to create new brain pathways. Practice memorizing. Start with something short, progress to something a little more involved. You can memorize the 50 state capitals, create rhymes or patterns to strengthen your memory and connection. Enjoy strategic game puzzles or riddles. Do crossword puzzles, play board game, card games, or word or number games, such as Scrabble and Sudoku. Practice the 5 W's. Observe and report like a kind detective. Keep a who, what, when, where, and why list of your daily experiences. Capture visual details. Keep your nerves firing. When you enter a room, notice the outline of the room. Add details about items. Sometimes we become mentally lazy and don't notice things when we go places. MOM is an acronym for helping preserve cognitive function. Motivation. What's the fuel? Ask yourself, why do you need to remember something? Reason reaps results. Observe. Memory issues are usually attentive issues, not retention issue. Be present in the moment. Listen and stay aware of your surroundings. Mechanism. Use tools to help your memory. Saying from Confucius, what I hear I forget, what I see I remember, what I do I understand. Monitor your self-talk. If you believe you can or you believe you can't, either way you will be right. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. Your mind is always eavesdropping on your self-talk. A way to remember things is called the memory castle. Use a place you're familiar with. Most would use their house. Always use the same rooms in order. Memorize objects in a specific part of the room or place in the room. Make an object active, funny, or startling. Examples of this, if you want to remember a grocery list, if your grocery list would be eggs, bread, peanut butter, broccoli. So in your front door, imagine it was egged, and imagine a duck eating bread in your entryway when you come home. And then you go into your kitchen and imagine the kitchen is smeared with peanut butter. And you go into the living room, which is the next room on your list, has your wife dressed up in a broccoli costume. The next room you go into is your first bedroom. Imagine there is a man in your first bedroom with a grape press walking on grapes. Try this memory castle and see if you don't improve your memory. Another system you can use is you can use the PEG system. If you can visualize an object, you can remember it better. This is the alphabetic PEG system. And you would first have to memorize an object for each letter in the alphabet. And then when you have this done, if you're trying to memorize a list, you can picture one of the objects as a trigger to remember the object that you're trying to memorize or the word that you're trying to memorize. There are books and websites that can help with this if you're trying to remember a list. Students, when they're trying to remember things, frequently use the PEG system. Small details. The more clearly our brain registers this information, the better we can respond to it and store it. A brain that misses lots of objects also naturally slows down quite a lot. This is a research slide from researchers that were testing out their MRI to measure the size of the hippocampus over a 5-year period. As you can see in this picture, the majority of people over 5 years, their hippocampus gets a little smaller. But surprisingly, there was quite a few people where the hippocampus increased in size. And this is felt to be because the people in the blue here, where their hippocampus increased in size, had increased cognitive activity with time rather than decrease. So illustrating that the brain, and with effort and use, it can improve rather than deteriorate over time. This is our book we also are recommending, Atomic Habits on How to Change Your Habits. This is from the author. A handful of problems arise when you spend too much time thinking about your goals and not enough time designing your system. And he talks about identity. If you want to change who you are, you need to change your identity. So if you want to become a reader, you start by reading every evening, and you have a specific time to read. If you want to run a marathon, you run 5 days a week at a specific time, and you gradually increase it. With enough time and consistency, you can become a marathon runner. And if you want to improve your sleep, you can have a system of doing things, and we're going to discuss sleep a little later on, but some of those things could be reduce your evening excitement using blue light blocking glasses and calming your mind in the evening. If you want to lose 20 pounds, you can change your diet with eating healthy food only, no evening snacks, and exercise. And you see yourself as one who eats healthy, changing your identity and designing your system. When you're starting something new, you need to start small, but be consistent. Make it obvious, stack it, make it enjoyable. There was specific research done when people are trying to change their habit. The first group was asked to track your exercise for 2 weeks and increase your exercise. The second group was asked to track your exercise, increase your exercise, and they were given information on the benefits of exercise. The third group was the same as the second group, except they were asked to write down a specific time and place when they planned to exercise. Now, at the end of 2 weeks, the first two groups had done very little, but in the last group, 91% had at least exercised once per week, which was double of the first two groups. So the point of this, if you want to change something, you need a specific time and plan to rather than just a desire. Live deliberately. Make your life. Don't let your life make you. Our program is a long-term life change, not a one-time program. This is again from the book Atomic Habits. I think we mentioned this before. You'll be disappointed in what you can accomplish in a couple of weeks, but you will be amazed at what you accomplish in a year when you persist with your daily plan. We're moving on to another section. This one is on labs, genetics, and time-restricted feedings. This is a list of helpful lab tests that we generally try to get done depending on insurance status. There is a lipid panel which measures your cholesterol and your HDL and LDL profile, which helps determine your risk for atherosclerosis. There's the CRP level, which measures your inflammation. We measure a thyroid panel, which includes the actual thyroid hormones and the thyroid stimulating hormone, the TSH, and we also measure the complete metabolic panel called a CMP. This measures all your chemistries, kidney function, and other mineral tests. The next is a complete blood count, which measures your white cells, red cells. We like to get a homocysteine level. This is a risk for atherosclerosis if it's elevated. We like to get a vitamin D and a vitamin B12 level to see what these levels are. They need to be in a correct range, otherwise you're in danger of decreased mental function. A A1C level, insulin level, lets us know if you're at risk for diabetes, prediabetes, or have metabolic syndrome. The lipid panel measures your total cholesterol, your low-density lipoprotein, your high-density lipoprotein, and your triglycerides. This is a picture to the right of this slide, which shows a schematic drawing of what this is. It's a package of lipids that are packed together with proteins on the outside, and the lipids and cholesterol are on the inside. If your LDL is elevated, it puts you at increased risk. The HDL is considered to be protective. It's the cholesterol being taken out of the bloodstream back to the liver. Apolipoprotein comes in different varieties. The A and the B, C, and E. They all have slightly different functions, but they deal with cholesterol. You can get an oxidized LDL blood test. It's felt that only the oxidized LDL is the harmful LDL, which binds to the arteries and causes atherosclerosis. It is not generally covered under most insurances, however, but you can order it through life extension, as we see here, and it is helpful to know. This shows methods for reducing cholesterol oxidation in food, and if people do this, it helps make the cholesterol so it doesn't damage the arteries. So you can reduce the total cholesterol in food by eating less animal products. Only animal products have cholesterol, and you can try to avoid cooking fats which contain cholesterol. The heat can oxidize it. So if you try to avoid cooking your food in animal fats, it won't have cholesterol. You can feed animals antioxidants such as tocophenol prior to the slaughter and processing. When permitted, you can add antioxidants directly to the processing of food. If you process foods that have cholesterol in lowest temperature as possible, it helps prevent oxidation. Package the food more effectively to exclude oxygen, such as vacuum packed. Store food in a dark place. You can cook food in garlic and onions, which will help. The way we measure inflammation is by the CRP and by checking the oxidized LDL. These are the most available tests. This is a slide which shows which fats are likely to be oxidized or converted to trans fats. We see the olive oil is low on the list, as is coconut oil, whereas sunflower oil, grapeseed, rice, and canola oil tend to get oxidized at a lower temperature and are more likely to be damaged. Inflammation causes vascular disease, cancer, arthritis, multiple sclerosis, ulcers, lupus, Alzheimer's disease, and many other diseases. That's why we've been talking quite a bit about inflammation and how to prevent it. This picture here is a picture of normal fat cells. The fat cells of adipose tissue are the only cells in the body that are designed to safely contain large amounts of fat. This is why adipose tissue is extremely rich in stem cells that can be converted to new fat cells to contain large levels of excess energy, as in the form of triglycerides, which are stored in fat cells. As long as these fat cells are healthy, there is no adverse metabolic effect except for excess weight for that person. This is why approximately 1/3 of obese individuals fall into the category of metabolically healthy obese. They have excess body fat but no metabolic disturbance that characterizes the manifestations of insulin resistance. This picture is a picture of overexpansion of fat cells that have become hypoxic, the result of the increased expression of both the inflammatory mediators J and K and IKK, thereby creating inflammation in the fat cells. This inflammation in turn creates insulin resistance in the fat cells. You can see how different they look than the normal fat cells that we looked at before because of infusion of white cells into the fat. This is what we call inflammation. With the development of cellular inflammation and insulin resistance in the fat cells, high levels of fatty free acids can leave the fat cells to enter into the circulation and be taken up by other organs such as the liver and the skeleton and muscles, which are unable to safely store large amounts of fat. This leads to the development of insulin resistance in these organs. Increased inflammation in fat cells summon an influx of macrophages. These are large white cells into the adipose tissue, which a correspondent release of inflammatory chemicals which further increase insulin resistance and release of free fatty acids into the bloodstream to travel elsewhere and cause havoc. New healthy fat cells could be generated from stem cells within the adipose tissue. However, this process requires activation of gene transcription factor, which is inhibited by inflammation and inflammatory cytokines. What we call lipid toxicity causes the release of large amount of fatty acids from the adipose tissue into the blood. It is this accumulation in other tissues such as the liver and skeletal muscle. This lipotoxicity increases the systemic insulin resistance. With the development of lipotoxicity, that is the real metabolic consequences of insulin resistance. The liver is the central manufacturing plant in the body. Raw materials, primarily carbohydrates and fats, which are brought into the body to be processed by the liver and either stored in the liver as glycogen or repackaged as newly formed triglycerides in the form of lipoproteins. The liver helps maintain stable glucose levels between meals by balancing the release of glucose versus storage in glycogen. This slide here shows the progression to cirrhosis from fatty liver. You see the fat from inflammatory release of triglycerides into the circulation become deposited in the liver. Scars are formed in the liver when the liver is overloaded with fat where it shouldn't be. Scar tissue makes the liver hard and unable to work properly, which we call cirrhosis. The liver cannot safely store excess fat. Therefore, of the first adverse metabolic consequence of insulin resistance is the buildup of fat deposits in the liver. This is known as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD. Currently, 20% of Americans have this fatty liver, and 90% of obese type 2 diabetic patients have this type of fatty liver called NAFLD. It is estimated that 50% of all Americans will have fatty liver by the year 2030. We see here a picture of a liver infiltrated with fat. On the left side, the white circular objects are fat infiltration into the liver. On the right side of the picture is what a normal liver should look like. Since the liver also controls cholesterol synthesis, insulin resistance in this organ is reflected in the growing dysfunction in the lipoprotein synthesis. This is easily measured by the triglycerides HDL ratio. That is a good clinical marker for liver insulin resistance. If it's greater than 3.5, this is a simple means for identifying insulin resistance, glucotoxicity, and lipid toxicity. The beta cells, which make insulin of the pancreas, sense glucose levels in the bloodstream and secrete insulin in response to those levels. Beta cells are very prone to toxicity mediated by inflammatory agents. Both excess fat and sugar can cause beta cell loss because of inflammatory agents. This here shows what a complete metabolic panel looks like. It has the glucose, which is the blood sugar, the calcium, which is the calcium in the blood, and then the electrolytes, which are sodium, potassium, bicarbonate, chloride. Creatinine and BUN measure the kidney function. Albumin and total protein are proteins in the blood. Alkaline phosphatase, allene, transamines, aspartate aminotransferase, and bilirubin are all liver function tests. Thyroid tests include a free T3, which is the active hormone, a free T4, which is a precursor to the active hormone, and TSH, which is from the pituitary and stimulates the thyroid to produce T4. This is a picture of the anterior pituitary, which is the master gland, where the TSH, where the thyroid stimulating hormone, which regulates thyroid, is produced. If the thyroid is not working well, the TSH is increased to stimulate it, like whipping a tired horse. So if your blood level shows a high TSH, it means your thyroid is not working well and you may need thyroid replacement. A complete blood count, CBC, is a medical test that measures the number and features of blood cells, including red cells, white cells, and platelets. A CBC can also measure hemoglobin concentration and hematocrit. Abnormal white cells suggest infection. Abnormal red cells suggest a nutritional deficiency. Homocysteine. We can usually get this covered under Medicare by a diagnosis of atherosclerosis. Elevation indicates inflammation. Vitamin D is a nutrient that helps the body build and maintain healthy bones. It regulates many other cellular function. It has anti-inflammatory, antioxidants, and neuroprotective properties that support immune health, muscle function, and brain activity. Vitamin B12 level. Vitamin B12, called cobalamin, plays a role in the red blood cell formation, cell metabolism, nerve function, and the production of DNA, the molecules inside cells that carry genetic information. If your B12 is inadequate, it is one of the causes of cognitive decline. Sometimes helpful tests for working up causes of cognitive decline include a Lyme's test. This would only be applicable if you live in an area where there's Lyme's disease. Antibodies to herpes simplex type 1 virus sometimes are measured because this has been associated with inflammation, and inflammation associated with cognitive decline. Iron levels, if they're too low or too high, they can affect your mental status. Ferritin is a measure of iron stores. Serum iodine is needed for proper thyroid function. Heavy metal panel can be measured. It usually measures mercury and lead. These can both cause cognitive decline and dementia if they're too high. Some people will have what has been termed a leaky gut, and there is now a test to find out if you're in danger of having that. People with a gut that doesn't adequately process the food and lets large protein particles get in the bloodstream can cause inflammatory reactions and allergies to certain foods, which in turn can cause autoimmune disease. So sometimes it's worth getting a blood test to see if you're in danger of having this. This is a place where you can get that at Life Extension is the name of the company. Such diseases called autoimmune diseases are frequently caused by leaky gut problems or other overactive immune system reactions that can be affected by the bowels. Such disease as inflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, scleroderma, psoriasis, and psoriatic arthritis all deserve a workup for leaky gut and sometimes for food allergy. It is possible to get an IgG food allergy test through everlywell.com. This is helpful if you have been diagnosed with leaky gut and autoimmune disease. Sometimes you can stop the foods that are triggering your autoimmune disease. Abnormalities in the APOE, alpha-lipoprotein E, have been associated with an increased rate of Alzheimer's disease and is worth finding out. One way to do this is to get this through 23andMe. This is a test. You would get multiple other tests along with it, but it would also show you your APOE status and would show you other risks for diseases. A less expensive way to get it is to go to Ancestry.com and order, which is a less expensive way. Some of the findings that you may find on your medical part of your genetic testings are called SNPs. Some people do not vert their T4 to T3 normally, and this is worth noting. It'll help your doctors be able to regulate your thyroid better. Some people don't absorb vitamin D well, so it's worth noting this. So you can take extra vitamin D. It's always good to get the vitamin D blood level to be sure you're getting the right amount. People do not convert the omega-3 fatty acids to EPA or DHA as well as other people, so they would need to take the EPA and DHA supplements directly. Some people don't convert carotene, which is found in carrots, to the active form of vitamin A as well as other people, so you may have to take a vitamin if that's the case. This is fairly rare. And then you can find out if you have a tendency for diabetes type 2. It's also helpful. Some of the other tests are this longevity gene called FOXO3, and then there is the caffeine metabolism, which comes with your genetic testing. People with fast caffeine metabolism can tolerate caffeine a lot better than people that are slow metabolizers. So this is worth noting. Caffeine, however, is something that none of us need. There is this gene called MTHFR, is a gene that provides the body with instructions for making a certain enzyme called methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. If this isn't working properly, you tend to have more atherosclerosis and inflammation. This gene assay can be measured by checking your homocysteine level, or if you've done the genetic test, you can find it out in your genetic testing. 30 to 50% of the population carry a minor mutation in the MTHFR gene. Generally, this doesn't need to be treated. There is less than 14% of the people that have the more severe MTHFR mutation that may impact their health that may be worth treating. The screening test for the MTHFR mutation is homocysteine. What is APOE? Apoprotein E is a class of protein involved in the metabolism of fat in the body. Lipoprotein are molecules composed of fat and proteins. Apolipoprotein E is a fat-binding protein. These are essential for the normal processing of triglyceride-rich lipoproteins. The peripheral tissue, APOE, is primarily produced in the liver and macrophages and mediates the cholesterol metabolism. In the central nervous system, APOE is mainly produced by the astrocytes, and one of its main functions is the clearance of beta amyloid. The beta amyloid plaques are what is felt to be the cause of Alzheimer's disease. Human APOE isoforms have been shown to confer different susceptibility to Alzheimer's disease. The most common isoform is the normal one, APOE3. It's present in approximately 75% of the population and is believed to play a neutral role in Alzheimer's disease. APOE2 is relatively rare and only 5% of the population have it and is considered to be a slightly protective variant against Alzheimer's disease. APOE4 exists only in about 20% of the population. However, the percent of Alzheimer's with this is 50% of the Alzheimer's patients. Alzheimer's disease is characterized by cognitive impairment as a result of inflammatory immune reactions in the brain, neuron entanglements, amyloid beta deposits or plaque formations on the neurons, causing neurodegeneration. Amyloid beta deposits or plaque formation in the brain is called neurodegeneration. There are many causes for amyloid plaque formation. Most of them involve inflammation. The amyloid problem is an increased production of insoluble amyloid and decreased clearance. This is a picture of probably an astrocyte in the brain, and the amyloid beta, which is pointed out there, can form plaques if they accumulate and are not cleared by apolipoprotein E. The way that the amyloid precursor protein is cut determines if it will be cleared easily or difficultly. If the APP is cut or cleaved by the alpha secretase, which is an enzyme, it has a favorable outcome. If it's cleaved by the beta secretase, it has a unfavorable outcome, and certain things lead to the either favorable or unfavorable outcome. Estrogen increases cleavage at the alpha, which is favorable and helps clearance of the amyloid beta. Exercise and BDNF reduces amyloid beta production by enhancing alpha secretase cleavage. Flavonoids are a group of dietary phenols that have been shown to possess favorable cognitive health benefits. This is felt to be because of the mechanism of decreasing production of alpha amyloid and increased cleavage by the alpha secretase cleavage. Increased cleavage of the beta cleavage site causes insoluble amyloid production. Things that do this are a high-fat diet, high insulin level, stress, and stress hormones. This is a picture schematically of an astrocyte. Astrocytes are a type of cell in the nervous system that supports the neurons. They're one of the most numerous of the cell types in the nervous system. They're the ones that have most of the APOE production. The APOE protects astrocytes from hypoxia-induced cell death in a dose-dependent manner. APOE is important in the degradation and clearance of deposited alpha amyloid beta species by astrocytes. All APOE isoforms consist of 299 amino acids, with the only difference being in a single amino acid change. APOE consists of an arginine amino acid at position 112, whereas APOE3 has a cysteine at this position. People with a type 4 APOE also have endosomal dysfunction of astrocytes, defective clearance of amyloid beta, increased production of amyloid beta. Copper. A study indicates that high copper intake is associated with an acceleration rate of cognitive decline, and that copper-dependent acceleration is lost in individuals who do not consume a high-fat diet. In animal studies, cholesterol-fed rabbits have exacerbated neurodegeneration following consumption of trace amounts of copper. Avoid a second hit. We want to avoid, if we're at risk for Alzheimer's disease, it's a good idea to avoid anything else that would contribute to that, which we call a second hit. So in other words, don't smoke, don't drink alcohol, don't be sedentary, eliminate all or nearly all junk food, especially sweets and food that are high sugar and foods that have trans fats from your diet, and consume a variety of balanced diets and plenty of vegetables. Be a diet and exercise or don't. Be overweight. Avoid all head trauma. Get enough sleep. Stay medically engaged. Stay socially active. The next part is on time-restricted feedings. We try to make it easy, effective, and to make you feel better. So this is how we can do time-restricted feedings. If we don't eat any food between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., we have a fast of 12 hours. If we don't eat any food between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m., we have a fast of 14 hours. If we don't eat any food from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m., we have a 16-hour fast. The longer the fast, the more time our body has to rest and recover from eating. Adaptive stress response. Fasting is a challenge to your brain, and we think that your brain reacts by activating adaptive stress responses that help it cope with disease. Sleep and fasting. A time of repair and restoration. B, D, and F factors. BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. In one 6-month study of people practicing the 5-2 diet that demonstrates that people's well-being improved over time, the brain produced higher levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which not only strengthened the neural connection but increased the production of new neurons, but also have an antidepressive effect. 5-2 diet is a type of fasting where they eat about 25% of their recommended calories, which is generally around 500 calories, on 2 scheduled days a week, and then eat normally the other 5 days a week. Autophagia. Used to get rid of damaged cells through a process by which the cell degrades its components, including organelles and protein. This mechanism is also thought to help protect against cancer and even aging by reducing the burden of abnormal cells. During fasting, cellular autophase is enhanced in order to provide energy for surviving cells. One fasting study showed that 40% of white cells are removed during autophagia of fasting and are rebuilt within a few days of refeeding. Younger ratios are being rebuilt, and more of them are lymphoid line. Differential stress reduction. Normal cells are more resilient to stress because they have increased genetic pathways that help protect them against stress, whereas cancer cells are unable to do this as a consequence of their oncogenic signaling. Differential stress sensitivity refers to the fact that cancer cells are more sensitive to cell death as a consequence of stress. This is how most chemotherapies work. Fasting mimicking diet enhances anti-cancer immunosurveillance. One study of 50 healthy adults showed that intermittent fasting reduces inflammatory markers. Another small study discovered the same effect when people fasted for 12 hours a day for a month. They had a decrease in the CRP and homocysteine level. This is a picture of senescent cells. Senescent cells are dying cells, but not dead, that produce toxins. The condition or process of deterioration that occurs with aging. Cells that acquire enough damaged cells can become senescent, which means they are not metabolic active and do not serve a function. Moreover, they can release inflammatory cytokines, which can then lead to the damage of neighboring healthy cells. Fasting enhances heart health by improving blood pressure, triglycerides, and cholesterol. Fasting can protect the brain. Other animal studies that reported that fasting could protect brain health and increase generation of nerve cells to help enhance cognitive function. Because fasting may also relieve inflammation, it also aids in preventing neurodegenerative disorders.